Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon to all my dear students and colleagues. I'm today here to express you something about the different functional areas of the cerebral cortex. See, basically, before going to this topic, I just want to tell you one thing, that I'm not a neurophysician or a neurosurgeon, but being a homeopathic physician, I have made an attempt, and being the teacher of anatomy since last 28 years, I've made an attempt to express whatever I can in detail about the functioning aspect of the cerebrum, or otherwise the different functional areas of the cerebral cortex. Now, what is the cerebrum? Now, if you go to the classification of nervous system, you know that the brain has got, the first part of the brain is forebrain, and out of forebrain there are two parts of the forebrain. One is telencephalon and second is diencephalon. Now it is the telencephalon which forms the cerebrum. Now this cerebrum in our head or in our cranium is located in two hemispheres. It is placed in two hemispheres inside our cranial cavity. Now each cerebral hemisphere has got two things. One is gray matter and second is white matter. The white matter is a connecting structure which is formed by myelinated nerve fiber, whereas the gray matter is formed by the dendrites and cell bodies of the neurons. Now, this gray matter, to increase the surface area of the functioning capacity of the cerebrum, is thrown down into different folds, different what are called as sulci and gyri, as you can see over here in this diagram. Now, these sulci and gyri are supposed to locate the different functional aspects or functional areas of the cerebrum, and those we are going to focus on those areas according to the different lobes of the cerebrum. Now you can see in the figure shown here that each cerebral hemisphere has got four lobes together. The one is frontal, the temporal, the parietal, and the occipital. Accordingly, they are labeled on the basis of which they relate with the bone of the skull, right? So these hemispheres, or both the hemispheres, are parallel with each other, and these are divided into four lobes. Now, this particular aspect of functioning area of cerebral cortex was firstly introduced by one scientist, by one German neurologist, Corbinian Brodmann, and he has introduced about 52 functional areas in 1909. Now, these areas, whatever he has explained about in the working in the cerebral cortex, he has divided those areas basically into two first, that is the sensory and motor. And the sensory area he redivides into two: the primary and secondary sensory area, that means the primary sensory area and sensory association area. So in total, there are three types of areas what you will find in each cerebral hemisphere functioning together. The one is motor area, second is sensory areas, and the third is association areas. Now, what are the aspects of each type of area, and what are the functional aspects of each type of area? We'll see in the subsequent part of the lecture, right? So these areas are located everywhere. But most of the areas are located on the superolateral surface of the cerebral hemisphere. Those we are going to focus much on, right? So even though there are 52 number of areas placed in the cerebral cortex, we are going to focus within the time limitation. We are going to focus on those areas which are more commonly involved with the lesions and all, and which are commonly we come across during day-to-day practice, right? So these are the some areas you can see. We are going to see those in details, but those are some areas which are located on the superolateral surface, and these are located on the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere, right? Okay. Now, the functional areas in the frontal lobe. So we'll start with I said in the beginning that each cerebral hemisphere has got four lobes: the frontal, the parietal, the temporal, and the occipital. And each lobe may or may not have, but in total there are three types of areas: the motor, the sensory, and the association. So we'll start with the frontal lobe, the functional areas of the frontal lobe. Now, in the frontal cortex, see, there are 6 number of areas you'll find. One is primary motor area, second is premotor area, third is supplementary motor area, fourth is frontal eye field, the fifth is motor speech area, otherwise called as Broca's area, and the sixth is prefrontal cortex, or the most frontal part or most anterior part of the frontal cortex, what is called as prefrontal cortex, right? Okay, so we'll start with the first area, that is primary motor area. Now, primary motor area, you can see the superolateral surface of the cerebral hemisphere, right? The first sulcus you can see over here is central sulcus. Now, in front of the central sulcus, naturally, the sulca and gyra are alternately arranged. So, in front of the central sulcus, there will be precentral gyrus. Now, this precentral gyrus will be helping to locate this particular area, what is called as the primary motor area, as Brodmann has specified is as area number 4, right? So it extends throughout the it is placed throughout the precentral gyrus, and some part of it on the posterior side. It may extend in the on the medial surface. It may extend on the paracentral lobule. Now you can see. I'll just focus it. Now you see this paracentral lobule. Now this is a similar area. This is a similar area or homologous area, but on the medial surface, and what we are focusing over here is on the superolateral surface. So this particular area number 4, you can see here, it extends on the medial surface, that means another surface, the inside surface, what is called as the paracentral lobule, right? Now how this area functions. Now for functioning of this area, you need certain afferent and efferent connections. So where this particular area receives the afferents from, on this premotor, you'll come to know premotor. That means it will be located in front of this motor. You'll come to know the next subsequent part, the premotor area. That is one. Second is somatosensory area. That means behind it here in the postcentral gyrus, this somatosensory area will be located. And last but not the least is thalamus. This thalamus is very important because, as you know, the thalamus works as a radar for every sensation to receive from periphery of the body except the sense of olfaction. So unless and until you receive a sensation, how will you react? Right. So for having the functioning as, or to carry out the functioning of this area, you need stimulus, and this stimulus is being received by from some sensory inputs, and those sensory inputs will be either from premotor or from the primary sensory area or primary somatic area, you can say, and one is from the thalamus, right? So those are the afferents of this afferents for this area, right? Now you can see the image. This is very important. This is primary motor area. Image is upside down. Now this image is labeled as homunculus. It is inverted. Specific regions with specific motor areas are responsible. See, in the specific area of the motor, that means precentral gyrus, the specific region is located. This is very important. Specific regions within the motor area are responsible for carrying out the specific movements of specific parts of the body. Only movements are represented and not the muscles. See, the only representation of the movements of different parts is located over here. What is more important for you to remember, that the image is upside down, and that too on the superolateral surface. You can see on the superolateral surface, it is just up to the lower part of the abdomen, and the pelvic area and the lower limb area is located on the medial surface, as we have just mentioned here in this particular slide, that it extends to the paracentral lobule. Now what extent? The image of the remaining part of the body here, that means the lower limb, especially the legs and foot, and including the pelvic organs. The image is located on the medial surface in the region of paracentral lobule, right? Okay, next. See, they have specified pharyngeal region, and the tongue is represented in the lowermost part, you can see, followed by the face, trunk, thighs. Now legs and feet and perineum are represented on the medial surface. Now this you should not forget, that the legs, feet and perineums are represented on the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere in the paracentral lobule. Now this is very important because you'll come to know what is the function of this, then you'll understand it, right? Now, so apart from this, now we have learned this precentral gyrus. What is that? Primary motor area. What it controls? It controls all the voluntary activities or volitional activities of the skeletal muscles, including all the movements, all the gross movement, crude movement, all those things it will control. That is the primary motor area, right? And what is the last thing I should say to you, that the legs and feet and perineum are represented on the medial surface. Now, what is this for? That, see, you know that your urethra has got internal urethral sphincter and external urethral sphincter. Now, internal urethral sphincter is involuntary. See, it has been under control of autonomic nervous system. Your detrusor muscle, it is under control of your autonomic nervous system. Detrusor muscle contract, the internal urethral sphincter opens, the urine drips the urethra. You feel to go to the washroom, but not always you go, right? So there is a volitional control over this act of defecation as well as urination. Now, this volitional, that means voluntary control, is because of this particular area which is placed in the paracentral lobe. Volitional control over the act of defecation and act of micturition is because of the paracentral lobule. It's very important function the paracentral lobule does. So in toto, primary motor area controls the opposite half of the body because the control is contralateral as far as the cerebrum is concerned. The significant bilateral control on muscles of face, tongue, mandible, larynx, that means this is median aspect. The opposite half of the body, that means it is appendicular skeleton. Now this is axial skeleton. Significant bilateral control over the muscles of face, tongue, mandible, larynx, pharynx, and axial musculature. What does a lesion cause? Lesions of this area leads to the paralysis of contralateral side, what is referred as the hemiplegia. Okay. Now coming to the premotor area, that means the second area, which is placed in front of the motor. That, see, this is the area where there is presence of the primary motor area, precentral gyrus. Now, premotor area, where it occupies? It occupies, see, anterior to the primary motor area, and it is located in the posterior part of superior, middle, and frontal. Superior, middle, and inferior frontal gyrus. See, superior, middle, and inferior frontal gyrus continuous in the posterior part. That means it is the most posterior area placed in the frontal cortex, just in front of the motor. Right? What is that? Premotor. See, direct contribution of this area. See, what it does means how it helps. You know that your cerebrum, the motor area of your cerebrum is directly having the control over every motor activity. Now, just control is not enough. Just control is not enough. You need to have a coordination. You need to have a coordination. Now, this coordination, because see, if you want to go everything in soothing manner, you need to have a coordination. Just control, just giving an order is not enough. It is not enough. So you need to have the coordination. Now, this coordination is brought about by the premotor area and mainly through the extrapyramidal system. As you all know that the motor area works through pyramidal system, whereas the premotor area works through extrapyramidal system. Now, extrapyramidal system consisting of so many fibers, namely, see, you can mention over here corticorubral, that means it is going to red nucleus of the midbrain. Corticonagral, that means it is going to substantia nigra of the midbrain. Cortico-olivary, that means it is going to olivary, superior, inferior olivary nuclei of the pons and medulla. All these are related, or all these are placed in the brain stream, right? Now, so I said that it works through extrapyramidal system. What for? To bring out the coordination among all the activities what have been ordered by the cerebrum. Now, see, what for it requires coordination. See, for example, if you want to hold the pen in the hand, you require coordination among the 20 different muscles of your hand, or what's so called as intrinsic muscles of your hand. Some will flex the finger, for some will extend the finger. Now, if you don't have got that coordination, you will produce the tremors, right? So this coordination is required. Now, if this particular area, what it functions, I said successful performance of voluntary motor activity. What I said just now, order is given by motor area. Now, if it is been implemented or not, it has to be looked after by area number 6. So successful performance of the voluntary motor activity stores the programs of motor activity. Suppose you have done any motor activity before, that experience is been stored assembled as a result of past experience. Now, responsible for programming the intended movement of primary motor area. See, I said just now, primary motor area gives just the order. Now, to bring out it successfully, it is the premotor area which is very important. So, premotor area will be more related with skillful act rather than gross act, right? Controlling the movements in the progress. These are very important aspect one should not forget, right? So what are the clinical correlation? Lesions to the premotor area will produce difficulty in performance of skillful movement. I just said that skillful movements are being controlled by premotor area. So if there is any lesion of this area, naturally the skillful movements won't be performed perfectly. So that means suppose you won't be able to comb your hair, you won't be able to button up your shirt, you won't be able to write a sketch or draw, play an instrument. All these required all skillful movements. You will be able to do it if you try to make an attempt, but there'll be tremors, no doubt. Apraxia, loss of ability to do simple or routine acts in absence of paralysis. That means the continuation act, flexion, extension, continuously. These are opposite movement. You won't be able to do it. Agraphia, when writing is involved. See, you won't be able to write properly. Agraphia, apraxia, all these are the terminologies which have been used to understand what is more important is the difficulty in producing the skillful movements, the performance of the skillful movement. That is enough for us to keep in mind, that difficulty in performing the skillful act. Okay, next. Now, in addition to motor area and premotor area, there is one more area what is called as the supplementary motor area. Where it is located? It is located in the medial surface. It is located in the medial surface here in the medial frontal gyrus, in the middle frontal gyrus. See, this is paracentral lobule. So in front of the paracentral lobule, there is one more area, small area, which is located on the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. What is that area or that gyrus is called as medial frontal gyrus, right? What it does or what it is for, you just see, it is related with the complex movement, stimulation of complex movement, clinical correlation. See, what are those complex movements? Now, if you want to stand, if you want to sit, if you want to bend, you require different muscles to come together to act at a time. So you require, and this is not a simple movement. This is a complex movement. So describe as assumption of a posture with a bilateral effects, including turning of a head while walking. If you want to turn, or while standing, if you want to turn, while running, if you want to turn and see. All these are complex movements, right? So these complex movements are being controlled, under control, or they have been looked after by the supplementary motor area. If there are any lesions of this area, that won't lead to paralysis, but that will lead to hypotonia. That means loss of tone of those skeletal muscles, right? Next, the frontal eye field. Now, this is very important. See, we are going from central sulcus further. First, in front of central sulcus, we have seen precentral gyrus, where we have seen the primary motor area. Then we have seen the premotor area. Then a little part of it on the medial surface, that is associated area for a motor function. And next, just in front, see, it is only present in the middle frontal gyrus. It is present in the middle frontal gyrus, posterior part of the middle frontal gyrus, just anterior to the precentral gyrus, right? Now, what is important? See, you know that you have got two eyes. Now, when you move your right eye to the right side, that means your temporal side, your left eye follows. The same thing happens if you do it in a vice versa motion, right? Now, what is that? These are called as the horizontal conjugate movements of the eyeball. You do it in a vertical manner also. You do it in a horizontal manner also. Those are called as conjugate movements of the eyeball, or horizontal conjugate movement or vertical conjugate movements of the eyeball. Now, these are under control of this frontal eye field. It's very important. Controls voluntary scanning movements of the eyes, and is independent of the visual stimulus. See, there is no relation for this. See, you don't misunderstand that it is related to vision. No, it is not related with vision. It has got no relation with the visual cortex, which you're going to see in the occipital lobe. in the next part of the lecture, right? But it is something different. It is just, see, you know that there are seven number of voluntary muscles, what are called as extraocular muscles of the eyeball, and three are involuntary. Now, for bringing out these horizontal conjugate movements or the circular movements of that is intorsion and extorsion of the eyeball, all these muscles are responsible. But and so these muscles have to be monitored by some area. Now, this monitoring is done by an area, special area in the frontal cortex of the cerebral hemisphere, what is called as the frontal eye field. What is called as frontal eye field, right? Okay. Next, the motor speech area. It's very important. Motor speech area. You know that. See here. See here. This motor space. Just a minute. See, you can see this motor speech area here. It's very important. Now, this is the posterior limb of lateral sulcus. Just above that, there are two gyri. One is pars triangularis and second is pars opercularis. You can see it's pars triangularis and pars opercularis, area number 45 and 44. These are called as motor speech area, or otherwise described by one scientist what is named as the Broca's, right? So these are specifically labeled as Broca's area. It has been said and it has been found that it is placed. See, all these cortical areas which we are learning are bilaterally present, but this area is present only in the dominant hemisphere. So considering that most of the people are right-handed people, this particular area, what is called as the Broca's area, is located to be present in the left cerebral hemisphere. In 30% of the individual, it might be present in the right hemisphere, considering those persons as a left-handed. Okay, so what it is responsible for? What are the functions? It is responsible for production of expressive speech. Now, what I am doing, it is the same thing. What expressive speech is about. You want to say something. You want to explain something. It is expressive speech. Right, vocalization brings about the formation of words. See, the sound is produced by the sound box, which is present in the midline of the neck, what is called as larynx. But this sound wave is converted into word. The process of conversion of sound wave into word is called as articulation. The process is called as articulation. So brings about the formation of words. This is very important. Now, this, to form the words, you require all other surrounding area also. That means it has been said. See, you require the primary motor area, you require the memory area, everything is you require. But the function is done by this particular motor speech area, that is area number 44 and 45. Thus, there is appropriate stimulation of the muscles. Now, so you want to convert the sound wave into words. So you require certain muscles of larynx, certain muscles of mouth, certain muscles of tongue, certain muscles of soft palate, certain respiratory associated accessory respiratory muscle, just to control over the frequency of the sound. You require all these muscles coming together, working at a time to convert your sound wave into word, what is said to be the process of articulation. And the area which controls that process of articulation is no other than the Broca's area, which is located in the pars triangularis and pars opercularis of the inferior frontal gyrus. Okay, next, the prefrontal cortex. This is very important. You can see we have seen enough of frontal cortex, the primary motor, the premotor, the what you can say association, the additional motor area or accessory motor area. Then we have seen the frontal eye field. Then we have seen the Broca's area over here. Now the remaining part of the prefrontal cortex, or remaining part of the frontal cortex. That means it is the most anterior part of the frontal cortex. It is related with what? It is related with the individual, the intelligence, the individual characters. Where it is located, and it is enveloping the frontal pole. You can see it is enveloping the frontal pole. Associated function concerned with the individual personality. No two individuals are alike. It has been said, right? So this individual's personality, it is being formed by this particular prefrontal cortex of your cerebrum. So you know that this individual, what do you require? You require expression, you require a memory, you require the language, you require judgment, and you require the presence of mind. All these 5 parameters you require to form your identity, to form your personality. No doubt, memory has to be there. There has to be speech or vocabulary, or you need the expression, you need the judgment, and last but not the least, you require the presence of mind. So all these together will form your personality, right? So well developed in primates, especially in humans, it is very well developed, this particular area, what is called as prefrontal cortex or intelligence area or personality area, right? What it does, it exerts its influence in determining the initiative and judgment of an individual. This is a very important sentence. It exerts its influence in determining the initiative and judgment of an individual. This is very, very important. So what clinically it is related? It is concerned with the depth of emotions, social, moral, ethical awareness, concentration, orientation, foresightedness. All these will decide who you are, your identity, right? So all these things, all these sub factors, what emotions, social, moral, ethical awareness, concentration, orientation, foresightedness, all these. Now what else? The capable of associating experiences that are necessary for production of abstract ideas. See, you work with your experience, right? You work with your past experience, and you make your identity with your past experience, or you express with your past experience, you judge with your past experience. All the time you require that past experience to have the abstract ideas, right? Okay, so that is all about the what you can say about the prefrontal cortex. If there is any lesion in this, the identity is lost. You don't know who you are. So there will be some defect produced in the identity of the individuals, right? Okay, now functional areas of the parietal lobe. Parietal, we are from frontal, we are shifting to the parietal. What are those? Primary sensory area, secondary sensory area, sensory association area, sensory speech area, primary auditory area, right? All those things you will find. Just primary auditory area, it is not, you should not say that, take it like this, but at least upper 4: primary sensory area, secondary sensory area, sensory association, and sensory speech area. Okay, okay. Primary sensory area, you see here, primary sensory area, where it is located: post central gyrus. We have seen pre-central gyrus is locating primary motor area. Here the post central gyrus is locating primary sensory area. The area number 3, 1 and 2 extends into the, so see, we saw that when we saw the primary motor area, we saw that it extends on the paracentral lobule on the medial surface, right or wrong? And we said that it is related with the volitional control or the act of defecation and act of maturation. Now if you want to have a volitional or voluntary control over these two acts, you need to have sensation, you need to receive the sensation. So if you need to receive the sensation that your bladder is full, or you need to go to the washroom, you need to have this area also to be located partly on the medial surface in the region of the paracentral lobule. In front there will be motor, behind there will be sensory. Opposite, now the same thing will happen inverted homunculus, as we have seen in case of the primary motor area. The image will be same, upside down, right from down head and up to the upper side, the up to the knee, or rather up to the lower part of the abdomen. It is on the superolateral surface, and that means this surface, and remaining part which is present in the paracentral lobule, which is placed on the medial surface, right? Now where it receives the afferents from? It receives the afferents from where? See, you need to receive the sensation. What it is related with? It is related with perception of what? Proprioceptive and exteroceptive sensation. Now proprioceptive and exteroceptive. Exteroceptive means what? Exteroceptive means which you are receiving from surface of the body. That means from skin. That is called as exteroceptive. What all those sensations are? Sensation of pain, sensation of touch, and sensation of temperature, right? These are the 3 exteroceptive sensation what this area is receiving. Through what? through, no doubt, the relay center. Only one relay center in the diencephalon, that is thalamus, right? It has to be relayed first in the thalamus, and it is the thalamus which will decide which part of the thalamus, ventral, posterolateral, and ventral posteromedial nucleus of the thalamus will decide the that these sensations have to be sent to the primary sensory area, which is located in the post-central gyrus. Stress area is concerned with the perception. What perception of these two things? Exteroceptive sensation and proprioceptive sensation. Exteroceptive are pain, touch, and temperature. Proprioceptive will be vibration, muscles, and joints. Now, proprioceptive means what? Proprioceptive are the sensations which are received from the ligament. It's a tendon. See, if I want to stretch my body to lift something out of the from the ground, I can stretch to a particular limit. Beyond that, I'll feel the pain in the muscle. What it is for? It is a protective reflex. It is not a disease. It is a protective reflex, making you aware not to stretch more, otherwise will damage your muscle. So that sense is because of proprioceptive. So sensations which are received from tendons and ligaments are called as proprioceptive sensations. Okay. Okay. Now, primary sensory area, what are the associated functions? What are the clinical correlations? Lesions of primary sensory area, what it does to loss of appreciation of extrusive. All these senses won't be appreciated. I said in the previous slide that it is related with exteroceptive and proprioceptive. So if there are any lesions, these exteroceptive and proprioceptive sensations from opposite half of the body, no doubt, from opposite half of the body won't be assessed, right? The crude pain, temperature, and touch sensation often return because they are related directly to thalamus, right? They are related directly due to the functions of thalamus. Crude touch, the temperature, and the touch sensation may be overcome, even though this area, that is area number 321, is not functioning properly. Okay. Then, so what these are the summary of all those sensations or all those functions what have been done by the primary sensory area. Localization of touch, localization of temperature. See, you feel hot, something hot touch to my leg, so that is localization of temperature. Somebody touch to my face, that is localization of touch, localization of vibration. Pain, proprioception, deep proprioception, voluntary hand movement, volitional, all volitional swallowing. That means you do, I'm doing this swallowing. Now I know I'm doing the swallowing. That is volitional. That is voluntary. That is purposefully, which is done. What is called as volitional swallowing. The tongue movements and their perception, all and skillful, all coordinative orofacial movements. Say, for example, when you want to whistle. If I want to whistle, I need to produce certain. See, whistling can be done in different ways by different individuals. So it is the individualization or otherwise, right? So that skill, it is a skillful act, no doubt. Done by your orofacial muscle, but it differs in different individuals. Why it differs? Because no two individuals are alike. Okay, next. The sensory association area. Now, just behind, now this is post-central gyrus is located for primary sensory area. Just behind that, there is sensory association area. That means it is called as the area number 5 and 7. It is located in superior parietal lobule. It is located in superior parietal lobule. What it is for? See, the sensations have been received. We saw here that sensation have been received, right? Which, sensation have been received, which the exteroceptive and proprioceptive. They have been received by primary sensory area. Now, what we need to do? What this particular sensory association area is going to do? This sensory association area is going to interpret all these. It is placed in the superior parietal lobule. It is concerned with perception. See, if I get a sensation of touch with an object, I can realize what that object might be, whether it is blunt or whether it is pointed, whether it is sharp, like that, right? So perception of shape, size, roughness, texture of the object can be understood because of the sensory association area, right? So that is called as the tactile perception. If you happen to walk on a surface in a dark and suddenly something get prick into your foot or into your sole, you can realize you can understand, okay, this might be a thorn, this might be a nail, or this might be a stone which is causing injury to your the undersurface of foot. That can be realized even before you look there and see and analyze by your eyes. You can sense it by your skin. So that is called as the stereognosis. This process or this achievement or this capacity of the individual is called as the stereognosis. The you can see the tactile stereognosis. That means the sensation received through the skin. Ability of an individual to recognize the object placed in his her hand. See, suppose somebody comes to you and close your eyes by his or her hand from behind. Also, if you are habituated, if you are familiar with that touch, you can understand who must be doing this particular act, right? So that is called as stereognosis. Understanding without without using ear and eyes, just by sense of touch. That is stereognosis. Ability of an individual to recognize the object placed in his or her hand without seeing. Now, this is one thing. And the second example, which I just given you, that is the understanding the touch without looking at it, right? Okay. So if that particular area is not functioning, if that area is not functioning, then you will find this ability of understanding or interpretation of this particular uh, function is lost. What is called as idiomotor apraxia, or it may be called as tactile agnosia. It is called as or stereognosis. See, I said here in the previous slide, it is in the previous slide I used the word stereognosis. Just put a behind S, you will find the adverse function, what is called as the stereognosis, inability to do, or otherwise it is called as tactile agnosia, not able to understand by sense of touch. This is very important in learning process. You'll realize in the next area, not able to understand by sense of touch. Okay, coming to the next function, that is the next thing about the next area is sensory speech area, or the area number 39 and 40. Now, just now, which the area which we saw, that is the sensory association area, it is located in superior parietal lobule. Just now, this particular area, what is called as the sensory speech area, is located below that, what is called as the inferior parietal lobule, or otherwise specifically they are called as the supramarginal and the angular gyrus. The angular gyrus and supramarginal gyrus. See here, area number 39, 40. See here, this is the area just where the posterior limb of lateral sulcus ends, just above that in the parietal cortex of the cerebral hemisphere on the superolateral surface, right? So area number 39 and 40. What are those? Those are combinedly called as sensory speech area. They are dominant in the left hemisphere, considering, see, sensory speech. We have seen motor speech, that is Broca's area. Now this is sensory speech. This is something different. See, when I'd be able to speak, if somebody asks me a question, when I'll be able to answer, when I understand what has been asked, right? So understanding the sense is called as sensory speech. Expressing the sense is in the form of word is called as the motor speech, right? So sensory speech area, it is located here in the inferior parietal lobule, the area number 39. This is area number 39, and this is area number 40, that is supramarginal and angular gyrus, right? Posterior part of the superior temporal gyrus, temporal lobe of the angular gyrus. Now see here, it's simply lateral sulcus ends here. Now this is superior temporal gyrus, and this is the area where the inferior parietal lobule comes, right? So junction of which will be helping to locate these two areas, area number 39 and area number 40, what is called as the sensory speech area. Now, what is the function of it? What it is concerned with, sensory speech area? See here, concerned with the interpretation of language through visual and auditory input, an essential zone for constant availability of the learned word parents. Learned word. Now see, you have learned certain particular or you have read certain particular a slide or a particular page, right? Now you know what it is been written over that. You can read it very fluently when you do it for the third or the fourth or the fifth time. Right? That happens, right? So that is called essential zone for constant availability of learned word patterns. Now, what is this? Concern with interpretation of language through visual and auditory inputs. Now you know that when you were in primary education, that means in a Montessori or a play group or the senior KG or a junior KG or a first standard, you have been taught in what way the teacher is to come in the class taking certain objects in the hand. Now, what how teacher narrates? Teacher narrates. Now this is aeroplane, right? So you see by eyes that it is aeroplane. That means you understand by this the object, the shape of the object by eyes. You hear by simultaneously you hear by your ear that it is been pronounced as aeroplane, and then simultaneously teacher writes on the board the word aeroplane, drawing the a big A. So A for aeroplane. So you learn it by three means: by touch, by eyes, and by ear. Now the same thing you will do revise at home as a homework by rewriting in the homework group A for aeroplane. So there also when you write you pronounce. What you pronounce you hear. Now if you whatever you are pronouncing, suppose I am delivering a lecture at present, and if I found that I have done some mistake, see I'll say sorry. Why I am able to say that? Because I'm understanding what I am talking about by my eyes. So that is conception. That is the thing what we interpret by auditory input. When I read it on the screen on my laptop, I can read it. If some mistake I did while pronouncing, I'll just make the correction. Why? Because I understand by my eyes what I am reading about. So that is interpretation of the language through visual and auditory input. This is very important. This is all learning. See, we have seen one part of learning, that is the the stereognosis. Now these are the two remaining parts of the learning. All three together will form the sensory speech area. Very important. Very important. That's why it has been said by our forefathers that when you read a topic, you read it in audible voice for yourself, so that you can learn by two ways, by eyes and by ear. This is very important. Very important. Because if you read, if you are reading and reading, but not in audible voice, in between you may have a nap. What do you understand? You don't. You never understand anything unless until you read it in an audible voice. That will make you or keep you alert, right? Okay. Clinical correlations. What are those? Receptive sensory aphasia. What will happen if these area are not functioning? Receptive sensory aphasia. That means lesions of Wernicke's area, or what is that sensory speech area, is area in the dominant hemispheres produces loss of ability to understand the spoken and written speech. This is very important. Written speech by vision and spoken speech by ear. You are unable to understand what he is asking. You are not unable to understand. You are able to hear that sound is there, sound wave is there, but you cannot comprehend the words spoken. Or something has been written on the blackboard, but you cannot comprehend by your eyes, right? So those are called as auditory agnosia. Auditory agnosia when you don't understand by ear, and visual agnosia when you don't understand by eyes, right? In total altogether, that will lead to sensory aphasia. How will you express, how will you speak if you don't understand what is being asked or what is being written, right? Okay. Next. So all this will relate to, or all this will lead to certain aphasic disorders, right? The lesions of this area produces variety of aphasic disorders. One, disability to read, what is called as alexia. Disability to write, what is called as agraphia. Disability to compete in the brain, what is called as acalculia. And recognition of the names of the objects. See, what is this? You know that 1 hour before or 1 day before you are aware that it was mobile, right? But you don't understand. You won't be able to speak that it is mobile. It is called as anomia, right? All these are the aphasic disorders. You are unable to speak out. Just because your sensory speech area is not functioning, that means the area which helps you to understand by eyes and by ear is not functioning, right? Okay. Coming to the temporal lobe. Coming to the temporal lobe, you see here the primary auditory area. It's very important. Primary auditory area, where it is located? It is located just below the lateral sulcus in the anterior part of superior temporal gyrus. It is superior temporal gyrus. Okay. What this is what this is primary auditory area. What is that for? It is for sense of hearing. So hear a sound. How it will how it will reach to that area? It will reach to that area, of course, again through thalamus. This is a part of medial geniculate body. It is a part of metathalamus, which is directly connected with the posterior part of the thalamus, right? So from here, the auditory impulse, the auditory radiation will reach to this area to to bring that sound wave which has been transmitted right from the internal ear up to this particular area, what is called as the primary auditory area, which is labeled as 41, 42, right? Where in the superior temporal gyrus. What are the functions? It is concerned with perception of isolated impressions of loudness and quality and pitch of the sound. Just you can understand, a loud sound is produced, a moderate sound is produced, or a fine sound is produced, or a tune sound is produced, like that. Just picks up the source of the sound. You can understand a little bit the source of the sound in the form of the frequency, not in the form of identifying the object, right? So if there is any lesions, unilateral lesions result into slight loss of hearing because it receives the auditory inputs from the cochlea of both sides, then loss will be greater in the opposite ear, as it's a contralateral control. And there might be if there is bilateral lesion, then that will lead to complete deafness. That means an inability to hear the sound, right? Just behind this area, that means area number 41, 42 here in the superior temporal gyrus, just behind that there is one more area, so area number 22, which might be included in the warnings, because it helps that sensory speech area, right? Now where it is located? On the lateral surface of superior temporal gyrus, slightly posterior to the primary auditory area, right? Primary auditory area. Okay. Next, what are the functions? See, I said primary auditory area will help you to hear and identify the quality of the sound, nothing else. What this area does? Associated functions: receives auditory impulses from primary auditory area and correlates them with past auditory experiences. That means identification, that means interpretation. Suppose you are in a room and you hear the sound outside made by some animal, made by some personality which you know very well. Without going outside the room, you can understand this sound, or this particular person has come, this particular animal is doing any mischievousness outside your home or outside your house. That you can understand without going outside and looking at it. That is called as the interpretation for identification. So this area is necessary for interpretation of the sound heard. This is very, very important. If not, that means if there is any lesion of this area, that lead to auditory verbal agnosia. See, if you don't understand what you hear by your ear, how can you pronounce? How can you answer? So it is auditory verbal agnosia. Lesions result in inability to interpret the meaning of the sound heard. Now, just meaning of the sound. Suppose I pronounce one word. You don't have got this area functioning. How will you answer? You won't. Right? So that is called as the word deafness. That is called as the word deafness. It's very important aspect of our life, right? Then coming to the occipital lobe, going to the occipital, see, far inferior, far posterior part of the cerebral hemisphere, that is called as the primary visual area, the area which is located just nearby the lunate sulcus here in the posterior or postcalcarine sulcus. Around that, in that area, there'll be location of this particular area, what is called as the primary visual area or the visual cortex. Location, walls and the floor of the posterior part of the calcarine sulcus, as I said, post-calcarine extends around the occipital pole on the superolateral surface. Yes, this is superolateral surface. Most of the part is, see, most of the part mark feature, the visual cortex is present on the medial surface also, right? So visual cortex is relatively thin and contains a huge amount of granular cells. Now we don't have to go in details much of that. We just have to see what it does, right? So this is the location of this primary visual area. What is the function? The function is just to help to see, visualize the object. You can see that there is an object in front of you by primary visual area. You won't understand anything else. You just can see that there is one object in front of you. Suppose I hold a piece of chalk in front of you. You can understand that some object is there in front of you. You don't understand what it is about, right? Then, but if you go to the secondary visual area, you will understand what, that the object is cylindrical, the object is white color, right? But you won't say that it is chalk. You will see, you will understand the color interpretation, you understand the shape, size, the area occupied by that particular object, but you won't understand what that is called as. Now that can be done only by that area which you have seen just now, that angular gyrus. Understanding by eyes, conception by eyes, interpretation by eyes, that is done by the sensory speech area, part of the sensory speech area, neither by primary visual area nor by secondary visual area. So if this secondary visual area, it is for understanding the shape, the size, the dimension, the color of the object, right? Not the name of the object. Name of the object can only be understood if 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 you have got that Wernicke's area functioning. Okay, so what are the associated functions? It relates to the visual information received from the primary visual area, enabling the recognize, appreciate object, clinical correlation. If there is lesions, it leads to visual agnosia, right? It leads to visual agnosia. Next. The other functional areas. Now all lobes we have covered: the frontal, the parietal, the temporal, and the occipital. Now there are certain 2-3 areas which are remaining, which are what we referred as other functional areas of the cerebral cortex. One is test area. Test area, you know that the sensation of taste is being carried by tongue, carried from the tongue by one nerve, what is called as cauda tympani nerve, from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, and glossopharyngeal nerve in the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. Now this area, for this area to understand, there is one nucleus located in the medulla oblongata, what is called as the 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 nucleus which is related with this particular function in case of the medulla oblongata, and this nucleus will receive the sensation of taste there, and from there it will send through thalamus to this particular area, what is called as the test area. It is located in the inferior part of the parietal lobe. See here, very simple, inferior part of the parietal lobe, and it is posterior to the general sensory. That's very important. The area number 43, it is located just above the lateral limb of the posterior limb of the lateral sulcus, right? Next, one more area is vestibular area, located near the part of postcentral gyrus, concerned with the sensations of face. And what is very important here, this is not as important as of other areas, the olfactory area, because there are limitations for olfaction in human being. We don't express much. We don't express much by the olfaction, but we express more by other senses which you have got, right? So where this olfactory area is located, I'll just go back with one diagram. I'll show you where the olfactory area is located. It is called as uncus. It is placed on the inferior-medial aspect of your cerebral hemisphere, and that I can locate you where it is present. Just a minute, okay? So this is the slide. You see this uncus. It is parahippocampal gyrus. This in front of the parahippocampal gyrus, there is a bulb-like structure, what is called as uncus, or otherwise it is called as the smell brain in the human being. It just helps to have the sense of olfaction, not much with interpretation, but to some extent it does help to have certain interpretation, but not that much, right? Okay. Okay, just a minute. Okay, so by going through all these areas, other functional areas and all, we come to the conclusion. See here, the dominant hemisphere. The left hemisphere controls the right side of the body, including all skillful right hand. Consequently, over 90% of the adult population is right-handed. During childhood, one hemisphere slowly comes to the dominate over the another. Only after the first decade, that means first 10 years of your life, the dominance becomes fixed. So naturally, most of the people are right-handed people. 90% of the individuals are right-handed people. So naturally, the dominant hemisphere is considered to be the left hemisphere. Now, this is just the revision for those we have learned just now. This is prefrontal cortex for language perception, the speech and all. This is individual, the individual personality. Now, this is the premotor area, motor area for the all these motor activities. This is sensory activities. This is language perception, that means sensory speech area here, and this is the vision. All these are the sensory areas what you got here. Now these are certain motor areas. You can see Broca's areas, we have already seen this. This is motor cortex, and this is the area number 22, what is called as the part of the vernix area, what is secondary auditory area. Now coming to the concludatory part of my lecture here, if you think what functions your left hemisphere does and what functions your right hemisphere does, even though all areas are bilateral except the Broca's area and the sensory speech area, understanding all those things, you can understand the left hemisphere is always logical, analytical, quantitative, and rational and verbal. That means, see, it can express, it can judge, it can understand. All those things will come in the left hemisphere, considering most of the people are right-handed, and the Broca's area and the sensory speech area will be located in the left hemisphere. Whereas the right hemisphere will be conceptual, holistic, intuitive, imaginative, and non-verbal. So all those concept of your life, whatever your the thing, your fixed ideas or whatever you have got with you as an individual, all those works. Now these things can be modified by these things with experience. That's why I said that left hemisphere is logical, analytical, and quantitative. Yes, next is, see here, the left brain processes the information in logical and analytical stages, whereas you can see now this, see this slide. Look at this chart and say, just say the color and not the word. When you try to do that, what will happen? See there. Your right brain tries to say the color, but your left brain insists regarding the word, what is being written there, whether it is yellow, whether it is blue, or whether it is orange. But your right brain will see how the yellow has been written. It is written in green, blue has been written with red, or orange has been written with the blue color. So that is all regarding the functional areas of cerebral cortex. See, I hope that I have finished in time, sir. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
I have finished in time. Barobar?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Anything anybody wants to ask? It's a complex topic. Still, I'm asking you. Yes. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Huh?
तुला
Hello?
बोलते टीव्हीचा आवाज करतोय कोणी पक्षाचा आवाज करतोय
It is very difficult. I want. I need to. I have to hear all those sounds together at a time. So just one can speak if any problem or any query. I have tried to finish it minimum possible time. It's a very extensive topic, but still I have tried to cover the things which are needed for you as a students of first year students of medical science. Okay. So, oh,
तरी बी चाल देते ती
hello.
टाक
Yes, sir.
Sir, stop करूया का?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Sir, hello.
Hello, sir.